Well, on this issues of logistics and performance measurements that we had been discussed, it is quite interesting what is happening. In the last 15 to 20 years, logistics has become a major enabler for performance for competitiveness in the economies. Nowadays, companies compete for time and for the speed on their supply chains. And that obviously has to do with policy. So it's not anymore a private issue. It has also become a public issue. It is embedded right now in the policy, in the decision-making processes, and on the institutional arrangements on public sectors. However, little is known about overall performance in certain countries. Little is also known about what are the main drivers on that performance. So that's actually what we have been discussed for the last 2 days in this roundtable. What are the best and available performance measurements and indicators from the public sector to really capture that a private sector a performance in their own supply chains and for the country to understand what is that why is that affecting the competitiveness of the country overall, but also of the economy. So one could say on logistics that it's a public and private issue. So when it's public and private and multi-sectoral in the case of the public sector, so you have different entities that are involved. You have a transport sector, you have the economy, you have customs, you also have on the trade sector or the trade areas, the ministers of trade. You also have the phytosanitary regulations. So you have different agencies and different transport and trade agencies involved. On the private sector, you also have different actors. You have shippers, you have the carriers, you have the receivers, both domestic and international. So you have a wide array of stakeholders involved on logistics. So trying to measure, trying to capture that performance, it is obviously difficult. It is obviously difficult because when a government steps up and decide to have a better performance indicators, better information to measure and to identify gaps and to identify areas for improvement. So it needs to address and it needs to interact with different agencies within the government. Oftentimes, agencies are not sharing all the time that information, are not collaborating and are not cooperating towards that single goal, which is achieve better logistics performance. Oftentimes, the relation between public and private is not homogeneous. There's not a complete understanding on why private sector could and should share some specific data for the public sector to address and to basically define policy making based on data, on evidence. So in that regard, allowing that public-private collaboration, enabling that interagency collaboration is key. It's key because to achieve that better performance, governments in countries need to have a general and overall policy, a logistics national policy that will basically outline the main issues, the main sectors from human resources, from infrastructure, from services, from trade and customs, and then identifying the main issues that need to be addressed and using the form of an observatory to monitor each one of those, let's say, building blocks. So once that general setup of logistics policy is in place, the observatory will really be key to identify issues on performance, define the metrics, define the better indicators, but also to inform policy. So once you have your general macro logistics policy, there are many specific issues that need to be addressed, and they are the responsibility of a specific institutions. So that's why it has been recommended also that besides collecting the data, besides identifying your indicators, besides implementing your performance measurements, is really a focus on the specific supply chains that are key for the country and the economy competitiveness. So that means that countries know what sectors are the most important. Countries know what are the areas on the economy that should be monitored. And then targeting very specific case studies to really understanding along that supply chain what are the bottlenecks, what issues need to be addressed, what new investments should be prioritized. So you have both a long-term system to monitor your performance, but also very specific measurements that could be implemented within different agencies that are actually involved. And last but not least, issues of logistics, issues of competitiveness do reflect the better means of people, of the citizens, of the users. That's why it was also discussed and it was recommended to go back to the economic analysis, doing ex-post analysis, impact assessments. So the benefits that were at the beginning of the investments identified can also bring back, identify whether those investments were a key on the areas needed, or perhaps some other actions could have done better for that specific purpose. And what we are also seeing nowadays is that this striking balance between economic development and sort of competitiveness policy on the countries. So that analysis will also help identify on areas where more infrastructure is certainly needed, but also where service and infrastructure management, really encouraging better performance on the private sector that is providing the service is also needed. So on these performance indicators, we basically identify the needs for a general policy on logistics, the importance to monitor and to identify performance measurements for that specific policy, the importance to really do analysis at a supply chain level on very key corridors, very key products that are the base of the economy and that should be prioritized on both diagnostic and intervention level, but also on a more looking forward analysis, informing other agencies of the government, really coming back to identify the real economic impact that both investments and decisions had on the population and the society. Thank you.